Welcome back to another episode on Trusty Rusty's transformation. So I'm still working on the suspension. I'm sorry it's been a while since I did an update. I had a bunch of family stuff come up, and then the days I was here working weren't quite ideal for recording, so I just haven't had a chance. But I'm not giving up. We're still on this recording train, I promise. So, as you can see, a lot has happened to the lower control arms. Just like what I had talked about, I cut the control arm in half, and I took a little bite out of the original control arm, and then we added that in. So this has been extended about, I think, a half, 3/4 of an inch. I'd have to measure it again to tell you exact, but small change, but it has had a profound impact on the alignment settings that I was trying to achieve. We now have, I think, at ride height, about 3 to 3.5 degrees of camber when it's at max adjustment. I personally don't think I'm ever going to want to run that much camber, but it's important to have a little bit of an overshoot because the control arms adjust your camber and your caster. So I need to have enough adjustment left that after I get the correct camber, there's still enough adjustment to get the caster right as well. So I'm hoping that this is going to be enough. Worst case scenario, it's more adjustment than the arms had to begin with. So basically, there's no way I've lost adjustment. You know, we're better off than we were no matter what. And I don't want to have huge amounts of camber because it just kills your tires. So again, like I've talked about before, not that this thing gets that many miles, but I'm not made of money. I can't be putting tires on it every year. So I'm trying to kind of find a balance as far as the alignment settings go and handling and just something that's going to work kind of overall in most situations. But back to the work I've done. So both of these control arms are finish welded. They've got plates welded in. They got the coilover mounts on. And you can see there's a whole bunch of other junk. And I apologize for the crappy looking welds. They're not the prettiest things I've ever done, but they were surprisingly hard to weld on. What I did is I took the smaller mounts that came with Jason's kit, and I retrofitted them, put in some spacers, and welded this in place to mount the sway bar. Again, we're going for handling. A lot of the guys that are running this kit are not running a sway bar at all. That's just not an option for me. This thing I want it to stay nice and level around it'll probably see it racetrack or autocross, heck, even just carving up the canyons. So what I did is I ordered a sway bar from this company, gktech.com. It's made for an S13 240SX. It's fairly close to the right dimensions and stuff for hard body. The biggest reason I went with this, and I'll show you the sway bar, the biggest reason I went with this sway bar is it can be broken down. It's got splines on each side, and then there are arms that attach to the sides of those splines. And so you can adjust the arms up and down. You can adjust how much, there's like a center bend, to clear things. You can move that. And it's a really long bend so that there's a lot of clearance so that I should never have any clearance issues. And then also on the end of the arms, there are 3 mounting locations for where they attach to the lower control arms. That's all awesome. The 3 adjustments on the end are going to give me basically adjustable stiffness settings so that if it's too stiff or too soft, I can kind of work. Not a huge amount. There's 3 options, but 3 is better than 1. So it gives me a little bit of play, or something to play with. So that's pretty cool. And then the splines and all of that, I thought there's probably a little bit better odds that I'm going to be able to make this thing work because there's so much more adjustment in it. And I think that's paid off. I made it work. It's not like I have another 240SX sway bar here to experiment with. And I would definitely not be running the stock one because it's just way not sufficient for this truck. I had horrible lean in it with the stock suspension. So it's certainly better. Again, I can't buy 4 different versions and try them all. So hopefully this is going to work out great. I'll let you know. But in any case, so that attaches here And in fact, let me grab the thing I made. So, I picked this up off of Amazon. They're just a small 10 millimeter Heim joint. 10 millimeters is the size of the holes on the sway bar, so that all matches up. And basically, this, I can kind of show you, attaches through this hole right here, like so. And if you can see here, I've welded in a little spacer there, which means that the Heim joint has some travel. So as the suspension moves, nothing is binding. And then at the top, I've got another little spacer that sits right like that. And then, you know, this obviously goes through that. So that attaches to the sway bar. And so it's a very short little distance, very tight, but it works. What I did is after I built all of this stuff, and if anyone's trying this, I highly recommend doing this. You really don't want your suspension to bind up when it's being compressed or you're in a turn or something like that. So I spent a lot of time after I got everything built. I took the spring off of the coilover, so the coilover was in place, just the shock part. And I went up and down with the suspension using a jack and turned the wheel and tried to just basically make sure that no matter what position all of the suspension components are in, nothing is touching, nothing is binding, nothing is gonna, you know, suddenly grab, lock up, and throw me off the road. So it looks good. Everything is looking good. So I've got a little bit of finish work to do on this, but that's my sway bar mount. And then the other thing that nobody does when they do these the suspension swap is nobody reuses a steering stop. I want that mostly because I don't want to tear up my tires, you know, if I'm turning at full lock. So I think I've devised a way to make it work. I welded this in place. This is actually the original steering stop, which would have been mounted kind of out here in a triangular way like that. And I haven't built this part yet, but I think there's a way to add a little steering stop adjustment thing to the arm. I'll show that once I get to it. It just hasn't been made yet. But that all that's really doing is so that when my steering is at full lock, there's a little adjustable thing. It's going to be like a little bolt. I don't have it sitting here with me, but there'll be a little bolt that's going to hit here and prevent the wheel from turning any further, because what you end up doing is you want to adjust that so that basically nothing is rubbing, binding, anything like that. So yeah, it gives you a little bit more adjustment. Again, in my opinion, the last thing you want to have happen, because it's always going to be worst case scenario, right? It's going to be at the worst possible time. You're going to be going into a turn hard. You're going to go, you know, your suspension's heaved over. You'll hit a bump. The tire goes up into a fender well or something like that, jams up, completely stops, and then that causes you to lose control of the vehicle and slide off into something. I don't want that. So, not to mention just driving around in parking lots and stuff, it's nice to be able to just steer and the wheel stops before you start making all those horrible grinding noises and rip something off or damage the tire or whatever. So is it excessive? Is it required? I mean, yeah, it's excessive. It's probably not required, but I want it. It's one of those things, right? So, and the other thing about it, this is silly. I mean, obviously this is going to be welded to hell, but this whole structure here is also adding extra strength to the lower control arm. It's making sure that that cut that I've got there is super strong. I do not want that to break. If that breaks, I die. You know, it's one of those, like, if this ever comes apart, I'm in really deep trouble, and I don't want that. So a little extra strength there is not a bad thing. Which brings me to the next thing that I need to do, and that's this guy right here. So it's the other side. I'm just using this to show. It's going to be on both sides. What I've done, so I've got my section that I cut out here. Obviously, originally, you know, you've got the part that I cut off the new control arm like that, and you can kind of see here the amount that I have added lengthwise to the lower control arm. What I'm doing instead is, this is the same thickness steel. That goes right in there. I'm going to finish weld that in. And then you'll notice that that jumps the gap. That goes all the way across from the base portion, the new section, all the way out to the end. And then this, just to make it look kind of OEM, I'm going to weld that back in. This is the piece that was originally cut out. I am going to have to jump a gap here, but this is actually not really structural so much as it is just to finish it all back. But hopefully after that, it's going to end up looking kind of like this, where it's just one continuous piece all the way to the end. And this is also adding back a little bit of extra strength. Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know exactly how strong this is. So, you know, overkill is underrated. If it's really strong, if it's too strong, that's not really a problem. If it's not nearly strong enough, I'm going to find out in probably the worst way imaginable. So it needs to be too strong. That's my goal. So that's going to get all welded up. Yeah, then these are done. The lower control arms are actually done after that. The top part is all finish welded. So I need to do some grinding and some cleaning up and just, you know, make it look a little bit better. I haven't even, like, you know, gotten some of the slag and stuff off. So I need to just kind of take the sharp edges off because I'm going to be working around it. I don't want it to cut me. Make it look a little bit nicer. And then this is going to get treated with PR15, which is just insanely durable stuff. So hopefully it's all permanent. This control arm, I want it to outlive me. So and not need any more adjustment. That's the whole idea. Do it once, do it right, be done with it. So that's the current plan. I suppose at this point what I should do is show you the rest of the suspension when it's all assembled. But first, I'm going to weld this up, and then I'll take you to the truck and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all mounted. I lied. Sorry. I thought I was going to have the suspension together, and then I thought, you know what? Now's a good opportunity to go ahead and paint these things because they're done. So that's what I did. Got the POR15 put on them. I mean, the paint's not great, but it's a suspension part, and they look awesome now. So that's kind of exciting. I'm going to show you the sway bar. So this will make more sense when there's suspension here. But this is the two-piece sway bar I was talking about. And I got some mounts on Amazon. I might try to make a little list of all the parts that I am using on this build just so that people can reproduce it if they want. But these are just some like universal sway bar mounts that actually bolt right up to the Nissan frame without changing anything, which is pretty cool. And they're slotted, so you can actually slide it back and forth a little bit and kind of adjust where the sway bar is front and back, which is pretty nice. So in any case, those are pretty neat. And then this is the GK Tech 240SX sway bar that I got. And so you can see it's on a spline drive, so you can change the angle of this arm. You can change the angle of kind of the clearanced out section on the bar itself. So you can kind of set those however you want, and then you just lock it in with this nut. And then these are the three positions I was talking about for being able to adjust how stiff the sway bar is for, you know, if you want to do some handling changes to the vehicle. What I did to make sure I can use all three is when I set this up, I used the center position and then just double checked that moving the end link to the outer position or the, you know, on either side is not going to create any binding issues. Then it looks like it's going to be fine. So being as adjustable as it is, you can probably adjust it if there is any kind of an issue and find something that will work, which is super, super cool. The other thing, which I don't have with me, let me grab that real quick. So this is the bump stop I made. Fairly simple. There's just a single little brace right here. I might actually get the camera and try to bring it a little closer. So, yeah, it's just a very simple plate that I made with a little brace on it so it can take a little bit of a hit. And then obviously this tightens up. It doesn't do a huge amount. I think I've only got it right now where it's, when the suspension's got like maybe, I don't know, like a 1/4 of an inch of travel here, which is actually probably about an inch of travel total. that's where it hits this. So it's kind of the last little bit. And the tire is actually at that point starting to kind of hit things in the inner fender here. So I figured that's plenty good. But I wanted the top position to be kind of as loose as possible. And then as you can see, I've got some adjustment here. All I have to do is add some washers in here, and I can kind of extend this out a little bit more and get a little bit of extra, you know, adjustment out of it, which is pretty simple. So in any case, I figure I can always adjust it down, but up is a lot harder. So yeah, it's adjustable down. Hopefully won't need it. It's really just there as kind of a worst case scenario sort of thing. Yeah, pretty basic little setup. I got the paint. I kind of hit this with a wire brush. I've got to clean it a little bit, and then this is all going to get POR 15 on it as well, just to kind of make it look fresh and new again and keep it from rusting. After that, I'm at the point where I can start reassembling. This is going to be like a suspension system. And the car will go back to being, you know, drivable. Yeah, so that's what we have for this episode. Next episode, I'm going to be doing some more painting, and maybe, we'll see how far I get, I might be able to do some actual assembly work. That would be really cool. I can't promise that, but we'll try, and we'll see how far we get. There will probably be another little bit of a delay for the next episode, mostly because Easter is, well, this weekend. So I'm going to miss a day that I would normally be working on the truck because of Easter. And then I've got some other stuff going on. So I'm hoping it'll be next week, but I don't want to make that promise because I can't keep it necessarily. So in any case, it is coming though. So stay tuned. I have suspension!